How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Gimel, Daf 73 of Masechta Menachos. Friends, Daf 73 we begin the, excuse me, I'm still not gone, the seventh parak of Masechta Menachos. Very cool, really, we're getting back into Menachos, like mamish, like literally korban Menachos, which is pretty exciting. Today's Daf, 3 sections. Section number 1, priests eating the shirayim of Menachos. This parak is called Ve'elu Menachos Nikmatzos V'Shirayin the Kohan. So we will discuss Menachos, that a kometz is burnt on the Mizbeach, and the shirayim is eaten by the priests. Next, we will discuss how korbanos are divided among the priests. Kind of interesting discussion there. We'll delve into what exactly that means in about 5-10 minutes or so. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And then, finally, the types of korbanos Gentiles can offer, right? As we've learned in the past, not only Yidden, but also anybody of the Chum, anybody can offer a korban in the Beis HaMikdash. The shaila is, what kind of korbanos? Can they offer a korban shlamim? Korban toda? What do you think, friends? Chevre, let's jump in, let's learn together. The first parak, the first daf of the 7th parak of Masechta Menachos, Daf Ayin Gimel. Let's jump in. Friends, we begin on Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis at the new parak, at the new Mishnah. Ve'elu Menachos Nikmatzis V'Shirayin La Kohanim. The following Menachos, a kometz is kometzed from them, and what is not kometzed, what is post kometz, everything else goes to the priests, and they can enjoy it. Here they go. Minchas hasoles. A minchas soles is be'etzem flour, oil mixed together, not baked or fried or anything like that. Ve'amachvas, fried on like a crepe kind of pan. Ve'amarcheshes, fried in a dental impression kind of a thing. Ve'achalos, a deeper kind of fry. Ve'achalos, and thicker baked breads, let's call them, even though of course they're not chametz. Ve'arakikin, and the thinner baked crackers. Minchas ovdei kochavim, the menachos of ovdei kochavim. Uminchas nashim, the menachos of women. Uminchas omer, the minchas omer that we've been discussing in the previous parak. Uminchas chotei, the korban mincha of a sinner, as we learned about Masechta Shavuos. Uminchas knos, the mincha of a sota, as we learned about Masechta Sota. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, something very interesting. Normally we assume that when a kometz is taken, normally we assume that when a kometz is burnt on the Mizbeach, the rest of the mincha is then eaten by the Kohanim. That they take a kometz, burn on the Mizbeach, and the shirayim mincha lahar nulvanov. That whatever's left over goes to the priests. Now when it comes to the mincha of a kohen, of a priest, when a priest offers a mincha, if he says, I'm going to bring a mincha soles, so it's entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. Not just the kometz, it's entirely burnt on the Mizbeach, right? The menachos of Kohanim, stuck in this week's parsha, if I'm not mistaken. The menachos of Kohanim are entirely burnt on the Mizbeach. However, Reb Shimon says something interesting, which is that while that's true, when it comes to a minchas chote of a kohen, all of it is burnt on the Mizbeach, but it's not simply just dumped on the Mizbeach. Rather, Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, minchas chote shel koyanim, the minchas chote of a priest, minchas chote, of course, is just flour, no oil, no levona. Nikmetzes, so a kometz is taken and burnt on the Mizbeach, but at the same time, the kometz karev la'atzma v'shirayim karev la'atzman. All of it is in fact burnt on the Mizbeach, like all menachos of priests, they are entirely burnt on the Mizbeach, but the minchas chote of a kohen, a kometz is burnt on the Mizbeach, and the rest of it also burnt on the Mizbeach. So Kilu, whereas normally if a kohen brings a minchas soles, so you just dump the whole thing on the Mizbeach, by minchas chote, and that applies to marcheshes, machvas, whatever, I think a kohen could also bring any of those, machvas, marcheshes, whatever, just there would be no kometz, would just entirely be burnt on the Mizbeach. Now, when it comes to minchas chote, of a kohen, there is a kometz, and the kometz is burnt on the Mizbeach, but so is the rest of it. Givaldi. Says the Gemara, Omer HaPope, we've seen this twice before, Kol Eicha Detnan Eser Tnan, that whenever we talk about these loaves, now by Minchas Soles, And I don't think that there's any loaves by the Minchas Solis. But all of the menachos that are fried and are baked, they are 10 loaves each. I think there's a machlokas, maybe it could be 12 according to one opinion. I don't think we've seen it yet, but I think that we assume that it's 10 each. And Amar Papa Kolechan Ditnan, Eser Tanan, that wherever we're talking about these loaves, we're talking about 10 loaves. My Kamashma, what's it teaching us? La'afuke me Reb Shimon, we've seen this twice before, to the exclusion of Reb Shimon, the Amar Mechza Chalus u'Mechza Ertikin Yavi, Kamashmalan Dilo. When it comes to a Minchas Maifes Soner, a baked mincha, there are two types of baked menachos. One is chalus, one is rakikin. Reb Shimon's, so generally so the Chacham's opinion is that when it comes to a mincha maifes soner, you choose. Are you going to bring chalus, 10 chalus, or are you going to bring 10 rakikin? Reb Shimon says when it comes to mincha maifes soner, there is an option also to have 5 chalus and 5 rakikin. Says Rav Papa, we are not talking about that though. We assume that it's always right. It's always going to be 10. What does it say? It's not an eser tanam. We're talking about 10 loaves. Even when it comes to minchas maifes soner, we're talking about either 10 chalas or 10 rakikin. Not like Reb Shimon says, not 5 and 5. Okay, there's no such option. Drink a shtick of water, and we'll go weiter. That's the water. Now the weiter. V'shirayin l'kohanim. Okay, so we said that, what did the Mishnah say? That these menachos, you take a handful, burn it on the mizbeach, and all the rest of it goes to the priest. Minolan, how do we know this? Well, the ksiva. Well, for any menachos where it says it explicitly, that the kometz is burned and the remainders go to the priests, well, it says it by those korbanos explicitly. Udelo ksiva, and for any menachos where it doesn't say it explicitly, well, ksivba, it does nonetheless say, v'zos Torah mincha. This is the Torah for all the menachos. Hakriv osa b'nei Aharon v'gomer, that the b'nei Aharon will bring it. What else does it say there? V'heir mimenu bikumtso, it says that they'll take a kometz, and then the next pasuk says after that, v'anoseris mimenu yochel Aharon uvanov. And everything left over goes to Aaron. So therefore, the answer is, any menachos where it says explicitly that there will be a kometz and the shirayim go to the kohanim. So okay, it says it explicitly. Any menachos where it doesn't say it explicitly, well, there is that pasuk, that catch-all of vizos Torah samincha. This is the Torah of the mincha, that the priests burn a kometz on the mizbeach and the remainders are eaten by them. So kometz is eaten by the mizbeach and the remainder is eaten by them. Now, it says the Gemara, look, those psukim were by wheat flour menachos. Yeah, that I don't, sure. Your answers so far have satisfied my curiosity about wheat flour menachos. That the Kohanim burn a shirayim, a kometz in the mizbech, and the rest goes to them. Kikomi boiling, what I'm asking about them is ba'a se'orin. What about a minchas ha'omer? What about a minchas sota? Now there is a kometz. The pasuk says that there is a kometz there. How do we know that the shirayim are eaten by the Kohanim? Ba'a se'orin nami. But one second, I'll tell you how we know that. Mide nikmeitz. Well, let's say that why should barley be any different? We see that by all of the wheat flour menachos, a kometz is burnt on the mizbeach and the rest goes to the kohanim. So the same thing is for the barley menachos. A kometz is burnt on the mizbeach, the rest goes to the kohanim. We say, true that, you're right. But kikami bayalon aliba de Reb Shimon. The thing is, our question is going to Reb Shimon, because if you remember from the Mishnah, what did Reb Shimon say in the Mishnah? Well, let's read it. The Omer, he says, Ika mincha demikamsa velo misachla. That Reb Shimon says that there is an example of a mincha that the kometz is burnt on the mizbech, and yet the shirayim are not eaten by the kohanim, according to Reb Shimon. Titnan, that we learned in our Mishnah, that we read just a few minutes ago. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, minchas chote shel kohanim. When it comes to the minchas chote of a priest, nikmetzes hakometz, nikmetzes, it is kemitzad, hakometz korev be'atzmo, and the kometz is of course burnt on the mizbeach. But what else is burnt on the mizbeach? V'ashirayim korev be'atzmon, the shirayim are also burnt on the mizbeach. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon, we have a precedent where even though the kometz is burnt on the mizbeach, the shirayim may not be eaten by the priests. After all, the minchas chote of kohanim, the kometz is burnt on the mizbeach, according to Reb Shimon, and the rest of the mincha is also burnt on the mizbeach. It does not go to the kohanim. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon, we can't simply assume. So look, when it comes to the wheat flour offerings, we said we have psukim that says zos teras hamincha. We said that we have psukim to say that the kometz is burnt and the shirayim go to the kohanim. But what about barley offerings? What about the minchas omer? What about the minchas sota? In those cases, there is a kometz that's burnt on the mizbeach, but how do we know that the rest goes to the kohanim? According to the chachamim, we said, no problem. Mematzinu, just like by the wheat ones, the shirayim go to the kohanim, so too by the barley ones. The thing is, when it comes to Reb Shimon, it's not so easy to make that mematzinu. We can't just say that because we do have a precedent of even when there's a kometz, the rest is not going to the kohanim, it's burnt to the mizbeach, i.e. by the minchas chote of a kohen. So therefore, according to Reb Shimon, how do we know that by barley offerings, by minchas omer, by the minchas sota, where the kometz is burnt on the mizbeach, how do we know that the shirayim do in fact go to the kohanim? Maybe they are also just burnt on the mizbeach like the minchas chote of a kohen, according to Reb Shimon. How is that, friends? Sheesh. Minolan, so how do we know this? Omar Chizkiah, Chizkiah to the rescue. Chizkiah, of course, I believe, is the son of Reb Chia, the Rebbe of Reb Yochanan. To Omar Kol, the pasuk says, "V'chol mincha blula b'shemen v'chareva." L'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh. That in any mincha blula b'shemen that's mixed with oil, v'chareva, or just plain without oil and without frankincense either, l'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh, they will be enjoyed by the b'nei aharon. The shirayim will be enjoyed by the b'nei aharon. Now, menu inyan the blula shalchitin. Now, in terms of any menachos that are mixed, right? It says v'chol mincha belula. What are we talking about? Right? We're saying any mincha that's mixed with oil will be enjoyed by the b'nei aharon. The shirayim will be enjoyed by the b'nei aharon. We already know about the wheat ones. We talked about that earlier. That the menachos of wheat flour, the shirayim go to the kohanim. So we already know that. So then, what's this pasuk talking about when it's talking about v'chol mincha belula goes to the kohanim? It's not talking about wheat, so it's talking about barley. It's talking about the minchas omer. The minchas omer is mixed with oil, and therefore we're saying that this pasuk is saying that v'chol mincha belula, that this minchas omer, which is mixed with oil, l'chol b'nei aharon tiyah, will be enjoyed by the b'nei aharon. And when it says v'chareva, the flour offerings, the dry offerings, now that's not talking about the minchas chote, regular minchas chote of wheat, because we already learned that earlier. So what's it talking about? It's talking about the mincha. It's talking about the dry flour offering of barley, the minchas sota. That's also the shirayim are enjoyed by the kohanim. Imenu inyan leblula shalchitin, tnei inyan leblula shalsorim, v'imenu inyan lechareva shalchitin. If the chareva is not necessary for the minchas chote, because we already know that the shirayim are enjoyed by the kohanim, so tnei inyan lechareva shalsorim, it must therefore be talking about the dry barley offering which is the minchas sota, that is also enjoyed by the kohanim. The shirayim are enjoyed by the kohanim. So that is how we know that even according to Reb Shimon, who says that by minchas chote of kohanim, where even though the kometz is burnt to the mizbeach, so is the rest of the mincha burnt on the mizbeach. When it comes to the minchas sota and the minchas omer, nonetheless the shirayim are eaten by the kohanim, as we learned out from that pasuk of v'chol mincha belula b'shemen v'chareva l'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh. Gewaldig. Friends, now we enjoy a discussion about how korbanos are divided among priests. Interesting discussion. V'hai lahachi udesanya. Frag the Gemara. 1 second. This pasuk of v'chol mincha blula v'shemen v'chareva l'chol bnei Aaron tiyeh, that pasuk teaches us that the minchas ha'omer and the minchas sota, the shirayim, are eaten by the kohanim. One second, that's necessary to teach as an anderazach, something else. What if you have a vegetarian priest, and you have a vegetarian priest, and he says to his friends, he says, look, people, look, I don't eat meat. You guys eat meat. So why don't we make a deal? I get the menachos, you get the chatases and shlomims and all the and oshams and all the meat. You guys get. I'm sure you don't mind that. Well, people who eat meat probably don't necessarily care for menachos as much. He says, look, why don't we cut it? Why don't we work it out like this? I don't eat meat. You guys eat meat. I don't need my portion of meat. You can have that, and I'll take the menachos. I'm sure everybody would be very happy. But nonetheless, we don't do that. What we do is we divide everything up, and then every priest, at least in that day's base of, gets a portion. Every priest gets a portion. We don't say, I'll take menachos. Well, we're going to really get into nitty gritty, right? We don't even say, there's 2 menachos here. How about this? I'll take this mincha, you take that mincha. No, everything gets divided up. Now, so how do we know that you don't have one priest who says, okay, I'll take the minchas and you take the chatases? Any mincha that will be baked in a soner, they go to all of the bnei Aharon. Not that this one gets this one and that one gets that one. No, all of the korbanos are divided up. Yacholo yecholku minachos keneged zevachim shelo kamu tachtein bedalus aval yecholku minachos keneged ofis shari kamu tachtein bedalus. Maybe, frek the Gemara or the Brisa. Maybe, okay. So you can't have one Kohen saying, I'll take the mincha and you take the chatos. Why not? Because it's too much of a jump. What does it mean it's too much of a jump? Well, if we take a look at the korban olav v'yored, for example. Say a person accidentally came into the Beis Hamikdash, he was tummy. So he brings the korban olav v'yored. Now, how does the korban olav v'yored work? It's be'etzim a korban chatas, kispa v'seira, if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, what's the next level? Not a flower offering. No, bird offering. A chatas and an ola. Bird offerings. What if you can't afford the bird offering? Flower offering. Bring a flower offering. So the flower offering is coming to kind of swap out not the chatas, not the kispa v'sira, but the birds, right? The Torah Mishnei Bnei Yonah echad l'chatas echad l'olav echad l'chatas. It's coming to swap out that. So therefore, again, frag the Gemara, Yachol, is it possible lo yicholku menachos keneged zvachim? Maybe you can't say, okay, I'll take the mincha and you take the chatas, because you can't swap menachos and chatas because it's too much of a jump, right? When you have a korban olav yord, for example, if you can't afford to bring an animal, a chatas, so then you bring birds. If you can't afford birds, then you bring flour. So flour is really coming to swap birds, not to swap animals. So kamu tachtein bedalos, because flour offerings don't come instead of animal offerings when you can't afford it by a korban ola v'yored. Aval yecholku menachos keneged ofis, but maybe one coin can say, hey, I'll take the menachos and you take the ofis, you take the birds. Sharei kamu tachtein bedalos, because after all, by korban ola v'yored, if somebody can't afford birds, they bring flour instead. So because flour comes to replace birds when necessary, so maybe you can have one coin say, I'll take the flour, I'll take the menachos, and you take the ofis, the birds. Talmud Omar v'chol naiseh b'marcheshes. It also says, I think the point is that when it says v'chol mincha, maybe that's like inclusive, and now all of a sudden it's giving all these others to exclude all sorts of things. So this is, so v'chol naiseh b'marcheshes, when it says v'chol, and also anything made in the marcheshes is divided up equally among everybody. L'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh. So where am I? So Talmud loma v'chol naiseh b'marcheshes l'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh. No, also that right, also marcheshes is divided up by everybody. I.e. to say that even in that scenario, swapping out menachos for birds, everything is divided up equally. Yachol lo yechalku menachos kineged ofis shalalu minei domim v'lalu minei kmachim. Okay, wait, but maybe you can't say I'll take the menachos and you take the ofis, because Ophis have blood, right? They have damim, they have blood, whereas menachos don't. There is just flour, so maybe they can't swap for each other. Yechalku Ophis keneged zvachim, but maybe one kohen could say, "I'll take the birds and you take the animals." Shalalu v'alalu minei domim, since they're both bloods. They both have blood. Birds, animals, they both have blood. So Talmud lomar ve'al machvas. It also says ve'al machvas l'chol b'nei aharon. That they also divide up all the machvases to come to include this scenario as well, that all the birds and all the animals need to be divided up equally. You can't just say, I'll take the birds, you take the animals. No, everything's divided up equally. But maybe the reason why you can't say, I'll take the birds, you take the animals, because birds are killed with your hand, right? Malika, with your fingernail, whereas animals are killed with a knife. Therefore, they're unswappable. But what about one type of mincha for another type of mincha? What if you say, I'll take the machvases and you take the marcheshes? They're all handmade, hand komets and stuff. There's no shchita or anything. Talmud lomar v'chol mincha. Well, also, no, there's no knives or anything. Fine. Anyways, v'chol mincha belula v'shemen. Okay, now we're starting to move into that pasuk, right? This was the pasuk that we used earlier to say v'chol mincha belula v'shemen v'chareva, right? So we use that pasuk to say that that's how we know that even according to Reb Shimon, minchas sota and minchas haomer, the shirayim go to the kohanim, right? That was the pasuk that we learned earlier from Chizkiah. And now we're showing our way, but that pasuk is needed here, right? When it says, and any mincha mixed with oil will be to the it teaches that even different menachos have to be divided up equally. You can't say, I'll take the machvases, you take the marcheshes. Yachol lo yecholku machvas keneged marcheshes, or marcheshes keneged machvas. Okay, so maybe you can't say, I'll take the machvases, you take the marcheshes. Shezo ma'aseh koshin, v'zo ma'aseh rakim, because they're different. Machvas is hard, marcheshes is soft. Aval yecholku machvas keneged machvas, marcheshes keneged marcheshes. But what about, maybe one could say, look, I see that there are two machvases coming up. I'll take this machvas, you take that machvas. Maybe that's okay. Talmud lomar v'chareva, it also says chareva, l'chol b'nei aharon tiyeh, that they divide everything up equally. Yachol lo yechalku b'kodshei kodshim. Okay, fine. So up until now, we're talking about kodshei kodshim. Kodshei kodshim. Right? Menachos are kodshei kodshim. Aval yechalku b'kodshim kalim. Right? Because what does that pasuk say? Okay, fine. Right? All these examples in the pasuk so far were kodshei kodshim. All menachos besim were kodshei kodshim. But maybe when it comes to kodshim kalim, maybe one kohen could say, I'll take the shlamim, you take the toda. Maybe that could work. So yecholku b'kodshim kalim, Talmud lomar ish ki achiv ve'im al toda. That the pasuk that we've been working with, I'll read the pasuk. V'chol mincha asher te'afim b'tanur v'chol naaseh b'marcheshes v'amachvas la'kohen ha'makriv osa lo siyeh. And then it says 2 psukim later, or really even the next pasuk, it starts talking about shlamim, which then segues directly into vim al toda yakrivenu. Starts talking about korban todas, korban shlamim, korban toda, kshem she'ein cholkim b'kodshei kodshim. And therefore the point is, just like in the previous verse, it was talking about menachos kodshei kodshim, and we're saying that we don't say, I'll take this one, you take that one. Rather, everything's divided up equally. The same applies to kodshim kalim as well. Okay, so be'etzem we see that when it comes to all of these korbanos, they are divided up equally. You don't have, I'll take this korban, you take that korban, or anything like that. Everything's divided up equally among the priests. Now, when it says ish, right, it says ish ki'achiv. So ish cholek vafilu b'amum ve'en ka'in cholek vafilu tam. That an adult can have a portion in these korbanos, even if he has a mum, he could still get a portion in it. A kohen doesn't get his own portion in the korbanos, even though he is completely healthy. So what was the question? The question was, why did we say earlier, to answer the question of how do we know that according to Reb Shimon, the Minchas Omer and the Minchas Sota, the Shirayim go to the Kohanim. So he had learned it out from this pasuk of V'chol Mincha Belula B'Shemen, that Belula B'Shemen is referring to the Minchas Omer, and Charev is referring to the Minchas Sota. But we saw from here that Mincha Belula B'Shemen was talking about Menachos, Kineged Menachos, like Machvas and Marcheshes. And then when it says Chareva, it was talking about Machvas and Machvas even. I think that's correct. But we used, right, right? Yeah. Wait, what? Yeah, nachon. Anyways, we use these psukim of V'chol Mincha Belula B'Shemen and V'chareva to teach that these korbanos, specifically Machvas Marcheshes, Machvas and Machvas, need to be divided up equally. So these psukim are not teaching that the Kohanim get the shirayim by Minchas Omer and Minchas Sota. Rather, it's teaching that all the different korbanos are divided up equally. And we don't say, I'll take this korban, you take that korban. So the Gemara answers, Ahu mikol nafka. No, the difference is that the brisa that we were just talking about dividing up all of the korbanos and saying everybody gets an equal thing, that was learned out from kol. Meaning when it says in the pasuk, right, v'chol mincha asher te'afeh, it was learned out from the word kol, whereas what we were learning about earlier was learned out from the word mincha. So we're learning out from different words in the pasuk. But 1 second, but I thought kol was needed for Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that this relates actually back to the beginning of our Gemara, right? We saw at the very beginning of the Gemara, we mentioned the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says that when it comes to mincha ma'ifasana, you can have 5 chalas and 5 rekikin. So on Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis, there was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who learned out from this pasuk a proof that no, you don't have 5 chalas and 5 rekikim, but rather either 5 chalas or 5 rekikim by minchas ma'ifasana. So elahu mi vichol. Well, okay, it's pretty technical, but basically, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is learning his argument from vichol. The brisa that we were just talking about dividing up all the korbanos equally, that's learned from kol. And the proof that we had earlier about the minchas omer and the minchas sota, that was learned out from mincha and a different part of the pasuk. So basically, they were learning out different things from different parts of different words and different parts of words. Okay, fine. Ravina Omar says, Ravina Asya Midatani Levi. Ravina comes to answer that question, our original question of how do we know that according to Reb Shimon, the shirayim of the minchas omer and minchas sota go to Kohanim. So Ravina says from here, Asya Midatani Levi, we learn that from what Levi taught, the Tani Levi taught, L'chol korbanom, L'chol minchasam, when the pasuk says, L'chol korbanom, L'chol minchasam, L'chol chatasam, L'chol ashamam, Kol korbanim l'rabis log shemen shel mitzorah, that when it says kol korbanim, it's saying even the log shemen shel mitzorah. Right? Of course, the mitzorah as part of his purification process, I'd say like the big korban there is the korban asham, the asham mitzorah. Why? Because with the asham, right, because you have from the asham mitzorah, the blood goes on his bahonis and on his ears. And the same thing, oil is brought together with it and also put on his ear, on his bahonis. So now, after the oil has been applied to the mitzorah, what happens to the rest of the oil? It goes to the priests. I may have thought that, the same pasuk that we're talking about also says mina eish. So I may have thought maybe only things that go in the fire. For example, a komis goes in the fire, the rest of the mincha goes to the kohanim. But maybe by the oil, the log shemen shamatzora, it's not going on the fire. I think you sprinkle, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the oil that you sprinkle towards the paroches, and then you apply the oil to the mitzora. What happens to the leftovers? So we're saying it goes to the kohanim, even though none of it's burnt to the mizbeach. Kamash malad, that the log shem and shematzora, the shirayim does in fact go to the kohanim. L'chol min chasam, when it says l'chol min chasam, the rabbos minchas ha'omer u'minchas knaos, to include the minchas ha'omer and the minchas knaos, the minchas sota, that their shirayim also go to the kohanim. That the pasuk says that v'achlu osam asher kupar b'hem, that basically the kohanim. We learn from the pasuk kohanim ochlim b'alim miskapim, but the point is we may have thought that what goes to the kohanim, only things related to kapara, whereas B'hai lahatir ka'asya, b'idach nami levar ka'asya. Whereas the minchas omer is not coming as a kapara, it's coming to allow the chadash, and the minchas sota is not coming as a kapara, it's coming to see if she did it or not. So kamaj malah, nonetheless, the minchas omer and the minchas sota, the shirayim does go to the kohanim. So we're going to keep going in the brisa, but the point is that was the proof here, where Ravina says we see in this brisa from here that when it says, what was it, v'chol min chasam, it includes the minchas omer, the minchas knos, that the shirayim go to the kohanim. So we learn it from here. Now, when it says l'chol chatasum, labus chatas ha'of, to include that the kohanim eat a chatas ha'of, a bird chatas offering. Sakadati chamina, I may have thought neveli, I may have thought they can't eat it, it's nevela, because it wasn't slaughtered, it was malikut. Komash malan, that nonetheless the kohanim eat the chatas ha'of. L'chol ashamam, the rabbos asham nazav asham tzor, when it says l'chol ashamim, it's saying that the kohanim also eat meat from the asham nazir and the asham mitzora. Asham mitzora be'edrek sibbe kikachadas asham ula kohen. One second, by the asham mitzora, it explicitly says that the kohen eats the asham mitzora. Ela l'rabbos asham nazir, to include the asham nazir, ki asham mitzora, like the asham mitzora, that the kohen eats that as well. The Asham Nazir. I may have thought that the Asham Nazir is just coming to allow him to wait. So the Asham Nazir is when he becomes Tmei Meis, but I guess it allows him to start over, I guess. Kamash Malan, that even though it's not any kind of kapara or anything, still the Kohen eats it. Asher Yashivu Zagezel Ager, this is Gezel HaGer. What's Gezel HaGer? Gezel HaGer is if somebody steals from a proselyte, and then the proselyte confronts him and says, hey, you stole from me, and he denies it, and he swears that he did not steal. The proselyte dies, he has no relatives, and then the thief feels bad, and he wants to do tshuva. So he brings an Asham, right? So this is Asham Gezelos. So you bring in Asham Gezelos, and then in addition, he pays back what he stole plus a fifth. Who does that go to? It goes to the Kohanim. So if Gezel Ager, L'chahu L'vanecha, it is to you and your children. Shalchahu L'vanecha afilu kadesh bosa isha. Okay, you can even be mekadesh a woman with the Gezel HaGer. That the Keren Vachomesh that the Kohanim receive from Gezel HaGer, when the proselyte has passed away, he has no relatives, that they can even use, even to betroth the woman, which is a bit of a chiddush, because when there's a Mishnah in Masechta Kiddushin that says that they cannot use, for example, kosher meat or shlamim meat or any meat of korbanos that they get, they cannot be mekadesh a woman with that meat, because it's mishulchan gavoa, but nonetheless, this is not considered mishulchan gavoa, and they can betroth a woman with that money. Okay, so Ravina says from that brisa, we see that the shirayim of the minchas omer and the minchas sota go to the priest. friends. And now we discuss what are the types of korbanos that non-Jewish people can offer in the Beis Hamikdash. This has definitely come up in the past, at least the principle that non-Jewish people can offer korbanos in the Beis Hamikdash. I don't know if we really got into what level of detail. So now we're going to kind of delve into it a little bit more. So that's an interesting sugya. Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, Shalmei Ovdei Kochavim, Olis, says Rav Huna that the korban, if an Ovdei Kochavim wants to offer a korban shlomim in the Beis Hamikdash, we treat it as an ola. It's entirely burnt to the mizbech. It's treated as an ola. Either I'll bring you a pasuk or I'll bring you a nagin, an argument. I can make the following argument of that the Oved Kochavim, his heart is towards the heavens. What does that mean? It means that the assumption is that when an Oved Kochavim wants to bring a korban in the Beis Hamikdash, he wants to bring an offering to the Rabbanah Shalom. Kilu has in mind that he's going to take an animal, it's going to be slaughtered and burnt on the Mizbeach. Korban Ola Be'etzim. So therefore we assume that that's kind of the intention, is that he wants to bring a korban that's going to be burnt on the Mizbeach entirely. So that's what we do. That's the logical argument. Alternatively, I could bring you a pasuk. I show you right the I'm going to read you the whole pasuk. Here would you say Asher Yakriv Hashem La'olah, but I'm going to read you the whole pasuk. The pasuk is Daber Laharon V'Abanav V'Al Kol Bnei Yisrael V'Amarta Alem Ish. That's the key word, Ish, as we're going to see later on. And we've seen in the past. But Ish, the double language, the double Ish is coming to include Ovdei Kochavim. And it says, Mi Beis Yisrael Min Ager B'Yisrael Asher Yaakov Korbanos L'Chol Nedarim V'Chol Nevosam Asher Yakrivu LaHashem Le'olah. And it says at the end of that pasuk, that same pasuk that includes Gentiles in offering korbanos, says Yakrivu LaHashem Le'olah Davka, that they're bringing korban olas. So therefore, I have a pasuk Asher Yakrivu LaHashem Le'olah called Demekayve Olah Le'avi, that any offerings any animal sacrifice that they're animally sacrificing, so that will be in olah. That's it. Mosav of Chama Bar Guria. However, Rav Chama Bar Guria asks a question of Kochavim, she's nadev lavi shlam, a Oved Kochavim who volunteers, makes a nedava to bring a korban shlamim. Nisanan li Yisrael ochlan. He gives it to a Yisrael. The Yisrael can eat it like a regular korban shlamim. The son of the kohen, if he gives it to a priest, the kohen ochlan, the priest eats it. So we see that it isn't just being offered as in olah. It is being eaten. If it's given to Yisrael, then by the Yisrael. If it's given to a priest, by the priest. Omar says, Rava, this is what it is saying. What the Brisa is saying is, Al Menashi is kaper boy in Yisrael ochlan. Look, if there was a Yid who needs to bring, a korban shlamim, maybe he said he's going to bring a korban shlamim, he has to bring a korban shlamim. And this Oved Kochavim says, hey, I'm going to sponsor your korban shlamim. I'm going to bring a korban shlamim, it'll be for you. Well then, amazing. So he's basically sponsoring the korban of a Yid, and we're saying that Yisrael, in that case, his korban shlamim that he needed to bring anyways, was sponsored by the Oved Kochavim, and in that case, the Yisrael can eat it. And if the same was true by a kohen, the kohen needed to bring a korban shlamim, and the Oved Kochavim is sponsoring his korban shlamim, so the kohen eats it. However, if a Oved Kochavim was going to bring a korban, there wouldn't be a concept of a shlamim in and of itself. It would be an olah. Mosiv Rav Shezvi asks a following question: Elu Menachos Nikmatzis, our very own Mishnah. Our very own Mishnah says, Ve'elu Menachos Nikmatzis Shirayim the Kohanim. Our Mishnah said, these korban minchas are kometz, and what happens to the shirayim? It goes to the Kohanim. Now, if we're talking about a korban olah, an olah is entirely burnt on the mizbeach. Nothing's going to the Kohanim. And yet, what do we say? Minchas of the Kochavim. On that list of Menachos is the mincha of an Oved Kochavim. That the kometz is burnt to the mizbeach, the shirayim goes to the Kohanim. It's not an olah. Rabbi Yechanan leikasha or Rabbi Yosei Aglili or Rabbi Akiva. Says Rabbi Yechanan, it's a machlokes Rabbi Yosei Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. that Rabbi Yossi HaGlili is the one who says, well, let's start with Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva is the one who says that all korbanos of Ovdei Kochavim are limited to olas. Rabbi Kiva says all korbanos of Ovdei Kochavim are olas. Rabbi Yossi HaGlili says there could be more variety. And therefore our Mishnah that says that the mincha of an Ovdei Kochavim, the shirayim, goes to the Kohanim, it's not entirely burnt to the Mizbeach. That's Rabbi Yossi HaGlili who says that there is more variety among the korbanos of the Kochavim. The sana that we learned in a Braise, ish. No, I'm sorry, ish. Matam lomer ish. Why does it say a double ish? L'Rabbo says so of the Kochavim to include, of the Kochavim, shenodrin nedarim v'nedavos Yisrael, that they can pledge korbanos just like a yid can. Just like a yid says, I'm going to bring a korban, and Ovdei Kochavim could do the same thing. Say, I'm going to bring a korban. Asher yakrivu Hashem le'ola. Okay, that they bring korban olas. Ein le'ola. All I know is that they can bring korban olas. Shlomim minayin. How do I know that in Ovdei Kochavim can even bring a korban shlomim if he wants? Talmud lomer nidreim. It says they're neders. Toda minayin. How do I know that in Ovdei Kochavim can even bring a korban toda? Talmud lomer nidvosam. They're nidovas, to include even todas. Minayin l'rabbas ha'ofis. You can add the word ve'aminochis, ve'ayayin, ve'alavona, ve'etzim. How do we know you can bring a whole variety of korbanos? Talmud lomer nidreim l'chol nidreim, nidvosam l'chol nidvosam. Right? It doesn't just say nidreim, it says l'chol nidreim. It doesn't just say nidvosam, it says l'chol nidvosam. It's coming to include all of these variety of korbanos. Ofis, minochis, yayin, levona, eitzim. Ola. So why does it specify Ola in that pasuk? Ola prad linazirus, to exclude, right, in Ola, to the exclusion of a Nazir. They can't make a neder Nazirus because a Nazir brings at the end of his Nazirus a Shlomim in Ola, but also a Chatas. I think the point is that a Ovdei Kochavim can't offer a chatas, right? You can offer a shlam, you can offer an olah, but not a chatas. And therefore, since a nazir needs to bring a chatas, he can't. So it's coming to exclude that. It's saying that a Ovdei Kochavim cannot be a nazir. Did Rabbi Yossi HaGlili? This was all Rabbi Yossi HaGlili who said that there is a wide variety of korbanos that a Ovdei Kochavim can offer. Reb Akiva Omer says, the holy Rabbi Akiva, Asher yakrivu Hashem le'ola, ein li'eh le'ola b'vad. Says Rabbi Akiva, when it says Asher yakrivu Hashem le'ola, it's only an ola. Ovdei Kochavim can offer olas, and that's it. Now, v'haiprad l'nazirus me'ocha nafka, me'osam nafka. Frag the Gemara, wait a second. Rabbi Yossi HaGlili had said that Ovdei Kochavim do not become Nazirs because it says Ola to the exclusion of Nazir who also brings a Chatas. But one second, we learn in Masechta Nazir, there's a Mishnah Masechta Nazir that says that Ovdei Kochavim cannot be a Nazir. And the Gemara there says, as we're quoting here, Daber el b'nei Yisrael, that the pasuk says, speak to the Yidden. V'amat aleim ish ki yafli lindor neder Nazir. Right, lindor neder Nazir. Lehazir. B'nei Yisrael nodrin b'nazir. V'ein Ovdei Kochavim nodrin b'nazir. That the pasuk says, right, when the pasuk says, Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'amat aleim ish ki yafli lindor neder Nazir, that the pasuk about becoming a Nazir specifically says B'nai Yisrael. That specifically B'nai Yisrael, Yidden can become Nazirs. However, Ovdei Kochavim cannot become Nazirs. So it says, Hasam, you could say, Ime Hacha, Hava Amina, Korbanu T'lolaisi, Hava Nazirus Chala Alayu, Kamaj Malan. Well, we need, in fact, the limud from Nazir, from Masechta Nazir that we quoted just now, from the pasuk of Daber B'nai Yisrael, because if I only add the pasuk of Ola, right, when it says LaHashem LeOla, from which we excluded Nazir, I might think that a Ovdei Kochavim can become a Nazir, just can't offer the korbanos. Okay, can't offer the korbanos. It says Ola to exclusion of a Nazir because a Nazir can't offer a chatas. But maybe he can become a Nazir, but he won't be able to offer the korbanos. Comes the other pasuk that says, no, Daber b'nei Yisrael, ish kiyafli, etc., to say that, no. The whole concept, b'chal, of a Nazir is a Jewish kind of concept. Come on, Azad, it's not. like whom is the following Mishnah, a Mishnah in Shkolim. Reb Shimon says, Reb Shimon, Shiva Devarim Iskinu Bezdin. That there were 7 things that Bezdin enacted. V'zeh echad men. When it says v'zeh echad men, it is not actually referring to what we're about to say, it's actually referring to the previous Mishnah. In Masechta Shkolim, it talks about Bezdin enforcing, basically Bezdin coming and collecting from people that are shkalim, and it says over there that there was a takana basically that the Chacham made about kind of taking a mashkon for shkalim. But anyways, so Reb Shimon says, look, there were seven takanas that the Chacham made. That about the mashkon when it comes to shkalim was one of them. And here are the other 6, right? So meaning, the point is, when it says v'zechad mem, it's not actually referring to what we're about to say in the Mishnah, it's actually referring to what it was talking about in the previous Mishnah about Bezdin taking a mashkon when it comes to machzis a shekel. Anyways, the Tanan Amr Reb Shimon says, Shiva Dvarim Iskinu Bezdin. Bezdin made 7 takonas, v'zechad mem. The previous Mishnah about the mashkon by the machzis shekel was one of 7. And here are the following 6. And the first of the following 6, which is the only one that we care about right now, is Oved Kochavim Sheshilach Olasu Mdinas Hayam, that if an Oved Kochavim sends is korban ola, okay, Oved Kochavim sends in a korban ola to the Beis Hamikdash. V'shilach ima nisacheh, and he also brought money to pay to buy nisachim. Obviously, he brought wine; we wouldn't be able to use it. But if he sends money for the nisachim, great. Krev Mishalo will use that money to buy the nisachim for the ola that he's bringing. V'imlav, if he didn't bring send money, so Krev Mishal Tzibur, so we'll use public funds to fund the wine. Lema Rabbi Yossi Aglili v'lo Rabbi Akiva. So let's say that this is the Rabbi Yossi Aglili, because we're saying that with the korban of the Oved Kochavim, we're bringing wine. Whereas Rabbi Akiva said only olas, but here we're saying we're bringing wine. So it must be Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Afilutem Rabbi Akiva, you can even say it's Rabbi Akiva because all of V'chol Chaverta. That when Rabbi Akiva says that Oved Kochavim when Rabbi Akiva says that Ovdei Kochavim could bring a korban ola, and that's it, just olas, it means just olas, but the whole shebang, the ola, the nisachim. So therefore, this is no steer. You could say it is talking about this Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva, that when a Ovdei Kochavim sends in a korban ola, it's an ola, but also there's going to be nisach, the appropriate nisachim as well. Mantana the Tanu Rabban, who is the author of the following brisa, Ezrach, that this is a pasuk by nisachim in Parshas Shlach. There is a section there where it talks about nisachim, and there, right, nisuch ayayin, nisuch minchas nisachim. Ezrach, it says Ezrach, citizen Yid. Ezrach maybe nisachim ve'eno Oved Kochavim maybe nisachim. Yid didn't bring libations. Oved Kochavim don't bring nisachim, don't bring libations. Yachol lote olaso tuna nisachim. Is it possible, therefore, that when he brings in korban ola, so then there would be no nisachim with it? Tamalomar kacha. It says by those psukim by nisachim. It says kacha like this. No, if he's bring right. It lists. What does it say? The pasuk says, Kacha yaisa leshora echad or la'aylo echad or la'seba kvasim or ba'izim kilu. This is how you offer these korbanos with the nesachim, even of dekochavim. So money, who's the author of this? Lo Rabbi Yossi Aglili, lo Rabbi Akiva. It's neither Rabbi Yossi Aglili nor Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Yossi Aglili Amar afilu yayin nami, because this brisa said that of dekochavim don't bring wine libations on their own, only together with a ola. Whereas Rabbi Yossi Aglili had said earlier that over the Kochavim even bring nisachim, even bring wine. Rabbi Akiva, and if it's Rabbi Akiva, Omar Ola in midachvina lo, and if it's Rabbi Akiva says only. So he says you wouldn't bring any wine, but also you would just bring the Ola and no wine with it. Now you might be thinking, wait, didn't we just say a second ago that Rabbi Akiva says Ola and everything with it? Okay. We'll get there in a second. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Rabbi Akiva. You can say it's either Rabbi Yossi Aglili or Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili. I can explain that this price could be like Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Sami me'ahi yain. On that list earlier, where it said You could just drop yayin from that list, i.e., maybe Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that actually of the Chum don't bring wine libations alone. So therefore, the Bryce is saying of the Chum don't bring wine libations alone. Okay, but they do bring it with olas. Maybe Rabbi Yossi Aglili could agree with that. Alternatively, Rabbi Akiva ola v'chol chaverta, as we said a few minutes ago, when Rabbi Akiva says that a Ovikom brings a korban ola with any appropriate nisachim, and therefore this Bryce that says that an Ovikom does not bring wine libations alone. Rabbi Akiva would agree with that. And when it says that he brings the korban ola with the nisachim, you would agree with that as well, because you bring the korban ola along with everything that is meant to go along with it. Friends, that was Daf Ayin Gimel of Masechta Menachos. On Daf Ayin Gimel of Masechta Menachos, we began the 7th parak of Masechta Menachos. And we discussed priests eating the shirayim of menachos. We talked about all sorts of menachos where the kometz is burnt on the mizbech and the shirayim goes to the kohanim. We discussed how korbanos are divided among priests. Right? We had said, well, can you have a scenario where one priest says, I'll take the menachos, you take the chatases, or I'll take the marcheshes, you take the machvases, or I'll take the shlomim, you take the toda. No. All korbanos are divided up equally. And then, at least, I believe among the base of that the kohanim working that day. And then we discussed the types of korbanos that Gentiles can offer. We saw it's machlokes of Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says all sorts of types, right, of the kohanim can offer menachos and shlomim and olas and todas. Not chatases, but a whole variety of korbanos. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says only olas, together with their nesachim, but that's it. Only olas. That's all they can offer. Friends, that was Daf 73 of Masechta Menachos. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Cheers.